So it's time to begin, right? In fact, we're a little late. Do you three know the words for Jai Radha Madhava song? Jai Radha Madhava? No? She knows. She's just saying she doesn't know. Okay. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Bala Girivara Radhe Gopijana Balabha Girivara Radhe Girivara Radhe Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Balabha Girivara Dhari Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Yamuna Tira Vanachadi Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivitakacharuja Asta Sarasatasi Simat. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavarinda Ki Gaura Premanandi. During this visit, we've been but reading the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya from Chaitanya Bhagavata. Okay. Introduction to Lord Chaitanya. You know who is Lord Chaitanya? Would you like to tell us who is Lord Chaitanya? He's Krishna. Okay. Who was Krishna's brother? Balaram. And who was Lord Chaitanya's brother? You don't know? Nitai. Gora, Nitai. Nityananda, right? Nityananda. But that was a trick question. Here's why it was a trick question. Because A and B. Lord Nityananda had a different mother and father. They weren't really brothers, but they were transcendental brothers. Mm-hmm. And the second, B, is Lord Chaitanya had an elder brother. And his name was Visvarupa. Visvarupa was elder brother to Lord Chaitanya. We're going to hear about Visvarupa today. That's why I've asked that question. The topic for this evening is Visvarupa takes sannyas. So the situation was Jagannath Mishra was his father, Jagannath Mishra, and Sachi Mata, that was his mother. And they had first, Sachi had a number of daughters that died shortly after they were born. And then she had one son that lived, that was Visvarupa. And then later, we just read, Lord Chaitanya appeared on the full moon night, Purnima, of the month of Phalgun, and it was a lunar eclipse. So that evening he was born, and we read the celebration amongst the Brahmanas and the whole community of celebrating the birth of this wonderful child. And then a little bit of his little boy pastimes. And now he's going to be a little bit older. You know, he's more than toddler. He can walk around, and he's full of mischief. So I'll quickly summarize chapter 6, really short, and it sets the mood for chapter 7. It was before he was school age, before he was 5. So, Krishna had pastime before he was 5. When Krishna was 3, Krishna was off herding calves with Balaram and the other cowherd boys. And Nimai was a Brahmana, and he was just doing mischievous things one after the next. And a little summary, he would point to the birds in the sky, and he'd say, I want. And when he didn't get, he'd start to cry. And he would cry and cry and cry. The only thing that could have him stop crying was they would chant, Hari, Hari, and he would immediately stop crying. Sometimes he would point to the moon. I want the moon, I want the moon, I want the moon. Can't have the moon. Ah! And they would chant. By saying the Lord's name, he was tricking people to chant the Lord's names. That's what he was doing. Then on another occasion, he was just crying and crying. He wasn't pointing at something impossible to get. Just crying and crying. They asked him what's wrong, and they brought the doctor, and nothing worked. Finally, he said, I want the prasad that Jagadish and Hiranya offered to their deities. Now, and even on Ekadasi days, we don't take grains, but Krishna takes grains. So they had offered grains, and they had made a very special offering that particular Ekadasi. And so he wanted what they had offered to Vishnu, which was grains on Ekadasi. And the parents were astonished. So they visited Jagadish and Aranya's home, and they held their head saying, how did he know? We made a special offering this Ekadasi. So they brought Nimai, and he ate the offering. He broke Ekadasi. He was showing his divinity, and they were astonished that he knew that they'd made a special offering. But it's a reciprocation of love, because they wanted to offer to the Lord some very, very special preparations, and so he accepted it. He was showing his divinity. Then he would go to the Ganges when he was supposed to be at home, and he would splash the brahmanas when they were chanting Gayatri, and he would take their dhoti that was on the bank of the river and steal it, and he would do very mischievous things. And so after all of that was happening, the brahmanas would go to Jagannath Mishra's home and say, your son, he's out of control. And so Jagannath Mishra went to reprimand his son. And when he heard he's coming, he said, tell him that he didn't come today. And he went back to his home. He went a different way than you would normally travel. And when he got to his home, Jagannath Mishra didn't see him, because he was ready to scold him for creating mischief and disturbing the brahmanas when they're chanting Gayatri. And the young girls, they would come and complain to Mother Sachi, your son is doing this and he's doing that. And Nimai would just smile. He was sitting at home. He had pen marks and pencil marks, and he said, I haven't taken bath. They're lying. I didn't even go there yet. Why are they telling you these stories? And Jagannath Mishra was bewildered by his own son's internal potency. It says, the question came up this morning. Why would he do mischievous things? And part of the answer was, it's loving exchanges. He was a docile boy. He would sometimes be docile. And that's coming up in the next chapter 7. Around his elder brother, he would not do mischief. He was very respectful. But because that's a different relationship, brother and brother. But with parents, the parental affection, parents, they expect, some restlessness is the word that's used often. He would do all kinds of restless things. Krishna did. It's very similar, because he's Krishna, similar to Krishna's mischief that he would do it at his home with Nanda and Yasoda. And they would delight in it. Would smile. And of course, Jagannath Mishra is a different personality type than Nanda. Nanda was very docile, and Jagannath Mishra was training his son. He's going to become, a Brahmin. He has to have good behavior. So anyway, mischief plenty. And that's the summary of chapter 6, because we finished in the midday session with chapter 5. So that's 6, but it sets the mood for chapter 7. In chapter 7, it's more mischief, and then his relationship with Visvarupa. So it's a long chapter. I'll read quickly. All glories to Shri Gaura Chandra, the Lord of all lords. All glories to Vishvambar, beloved of devotees. All glories to Sri Jagannath and Sachi's son, who is the life and soul of all. O Lord, please deliver the living entities by your merciful glance. In this way, Sri Gaurasundar manifested his childhood pastimes in Navadvip. The Lord regularly engaged in mischief-making. He would not stop, even by his mother's order. Whenever his parents tried to restrain him, he would create twice as much mischief. He would break anything at home that he could get his hands on. Thus, out of fear, his parents no longer tried to restrain the Lord, who was then free to fully enjoy his pastimes. The topics of Adikanda are like a stream of nectar, for they relate to the childhood pastimes of Lord Narayan. The Lord is not afraid of anyone, including his parents, but he displayed humility upon seeing his elder brother, Visvarupa. Sri Visvarupa, the personality of Godhead, was the Lord's elder brother. From birth, he was detached from sense gratification. He was the abode of transcendental qualities. He explained that the purport of all the scriptures was devotional service to Vishnu, and no one was able to refute his explanation. With his ears, mouth, mind, and other senses, he would not speak or hear anything other than devotional service to Lord Krishna. Seeing his brother's uncommon activities, Visvarupa was struck with wonder and thought, this boy cannot be an ordinary child. His beauty and his activities appear just like those of Sri Bal Gopal. I can understand from the uncommon activities he constantly performs that Lord Krishna enjoys pastimes through the body of this child. Considering in this way, Visvarupa kept Lord Chaitanya's activities, kept to his own activities, and did not disclose this secret to anyone. He constantly associated with the Vaishnavas and discussed topics of Krishna, performing devotional service to Krishna, and engaging in the worship of Krishna. But the specific point here is, in this the little commentary explaining, Visvarupa was how can you understand Krishna? Answer, by bhakti, and by bhakti alone can he be understood. So Krishna, in the form of Lord Chaitanya, was showing his elder brother that he was Krishna. And Visvarupa got it. But he didn't disclose it to anyone because he didn't want to disturb their mood of seeing him as their darling son or friend or whatever. The people of the world at that time were mad for enjoying wealth, children, and education. Whenever they saw Vaishnavas, they would ridicule them. Commentary, Bhaktisiddhanta made commentary, and he said, the prevalent teaching at the time was Charvak Muni's philosophy. Charvak Muni was an atheist, and his philosophy was, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die. Beg, borrow, or steal, but get ghee. Because with ghee you can make nice foods and you can have palatable dishes and you can enjoy life, because tomorrow you may die. There's nothing but this life, and enjoy this life as much as you can. So people during this time, they were followers of his ideology. They did some other worships and so forth, but that was like the philosophy that they lived by. And so when the devotees had a different pursuit, different style of life, they would ridicule them. They would compose blasphemous rhymes and recite them when they saw a Vaishnava. They would challenge, what is the use of being a sannyasi, a chaste wife, or a tapasvi? They must also die. We consider someone pious if he can ride on a palanquin or horse surrounded by 10 or 20 people. You all cry for the Lord with love and devotion, yet you remain poverty-stricken. You loudly repeat and chant the name of Lord Hari, but he becomes angry when anyone loudly chants his name. That was another atheistic philosophy at the time. Don't call God's name aloud because he'll become angry with you. So it's interesting. They're atheists, but they say if you call God's name, he'll be angry with you. So he's a person. Anyway, they didn't like their chanting. People were devoid of devotion to the Supreme Lord and would speak to the Vaishnavas in this way, and the devotees felt great sorrow on hearing such things. The sound of the chanting of Lord Krishna's name could not be heard anywhere, as everyone in the world continually burned in the fire of material existence. The Supreme Lord Sri Visvarupa was most distressed because he could not hear any glorification of his worshipable Lord Krishna. Even those who spoke on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam would explain everything, but would not explain anything about devotion to Krishna. The teachers wasted their lives in useless arguments. People of the world had not even heard the name Bhakti. Thus the devotees, headed by Advaitacharya, simply cried upon seeing the atheistic mentality of the people in such distress. Visvarupa considered, I will not even look at the face of these materialistic people. Rather, I will go to the forest. Every morning, Sri Visvarupa would take bath in the Ganga and then go to the gathering at Advaita Prabhu's home. Advaita, you know who was Advaita, right? Okay. So Advaita had two homes, wealthy people sometimes. So his main home was in Shantipur, some distance from Navadvip. But he also had a home, small place, but a home near Srivas Pandit, amongst where all the Brahmana community resided. So every morning Advaita would hold a Srimad Bhagavatam class. Specifically a Srimad Bhagavatam class. And Visvarupa, his elder brother, go to the Ganga, worship his deity, go hear the Bhagavatam class every morning. Visvarupa established devotional service to Krishna and is as the essence of all scriptures. On hearing his explanation, Advaita Prabhu roared in happiness. Advaita left his deity worship to embrace Visvarupa, and all the Vaishnavas happily chanted, Hari, Hari. Then in the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness, all the devotees roared loudly like lions, and lamentation no longer remained in their hearts. The devotees had no desire to leave Visvarupa's association to go home, nor did Visvarupa have any desire to leave them. After completing her cooking, Mother Sachi told Vishwambar, go quickly and bring your elder brother. On the order of his mother, the Lord came to Advaitacharya's house to call his elder brother home. When the Lord arrived there, he saw the Vaishnavas engaged in discussing topics of Lord Krishna. Hearing his glorification, Sri Gaurasundar glanced mercifully on them. They were engaged in topics about Krishna, and he was Krishna, so he was happy that they were doing like this. Each of the Lord's limbs surpassed the topmost limit of beauty. Even millions of moons could not be compared with one of his toenails. Standing naked, with his body covered with dust, Vishwambar smiled and spoke to his elder brother, my dear brother, please come to eat. Mother is calling you. Vishwambar then caught hold of his brother's dhoti and followed him home. On seeing the Lord's enchanting form, all the devotees were stunned, and they continually stared at him. The devotees practically entered samadhi. They were even unable to speak about Krishna. Devotees are by nature overwhelmed on seeing their Lord. Indeed, even before the devotees realized his identity, the Lord stole away their hearts. Materialistic persons are unable to understand how the Lord steals the hearts of his devotees. Yet this mystery was disclosed by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharishi Parikshit in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Please hear now the matchless discussions between Shukadeva and Parikshit from Srimad Bhagavatam in this connection. When Sri Gaurachandra appeared as Krishna in Gokula, he played in all the houses there with the other children. From the time of the Lord's birth, the gopis had more affection for him than they had for their own sons. Even though they never considered Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they had a natural attraction for him more than they had for their own sons. Hearing this, Maharishi Parikshit was struck with wonder. His hair stood on end, and he inquired from Shukadeva Goswami as follows, "O Goswami, I have never heard before such wonderful narrations within the three worlds. Please explain to me how the gopis displayed more affection for Krishna, another's son, than their own sons." Shukadeva Goswami explained, "O Maharishi Parikshit, it is well known that the supersoul is dear to all. When the soul leaves the son, wife, or friend, their body is taken out of the house. Therefore, the supersoul is the life of everyone. The supersoul is the son of Nanda Maharaj. Thus, the gopis have more affection for Krishna due to his natural characteristics as the Supreme Soul. This, however, applies only to the devotees, not to others. Otherwise, why doesn't everyone show affection for Krishna? Why do demons like Kamsa envy Krishna, the Supreme Soul? This is simply due to previous offenses. Everyone knows that sugar is sweet by nature, but if the tongue is diseased, then the sugar will taste bitter. That is the fault of the tongue, not the sugar. The conclusion is that Lord Chaitanya is the sweetest of all. Everyone saw the Lord of Navadvip, yet no one could recognize him other than the devotees. The Lord of Vaikuntha attracted the hearts of the devotees as he enjoyed his pastimes in Navadvip. Thus, after enchanting everyone's heart, Lord Vishwambhara returned home with his elder brother. Now, there's a very nice section where this is being taken from the Bhagavatam. It comes after the Brahma Vimohan Leela. Lord Brahma stole the calves and cowherd boys. You know that one? Brahma put the calves and cowherd boys in a cave to see what Krishna would do. You know that pastime? Yes? No? Yes. Yes. And then when he went back, a whole year had passed. He saw the cowherd boys sitting there. Because the moment in Brahma's time is a whole year on earth. He went back to the cave, but they were still in the cave. Then he went back and they were sitting with Krishna. But what's going on? And then Krishna showed not only the cowherd boy form, because they were his expansions. He showed forms of Narayan and showed universes and showed all the opulences of the Lord and all his potencies. And it was prayers that personified Vedas, singing praises and prayers to the Lord. And then poof, they all disappeared. Then he offered prayers. So then he departed after his prayers. Krishna went back, finished lunch with the cowherd boys, and they went back home. So there is this question right in that section. It's the end of chapter 14, Canto 10, where when Krishna returns with the cowherd boys, it's really nice. I like this section. When Krishna returns with the cowherd boys, he had been for 1 year the sons of all the mothers and the calves of all the cows for 1 year. And before that, the mothers were thinking, oh, I have more affection for Krishna than for my own son. So Krishna knew that, so he became their son. They wanted to have a son like Krishna. So Krishna became their son. And then they had more affection for Krishna as their son than they had for their son, when it was just their son, because it's double. It's Krishna plus the affection they had for their son. And then after that 1 year passed, here comes Krishna back from the pasturing ground. And they're very, very happy to see Krishna more than they are to see their son. So Maharaj Parikshit says, what's going on here? It's unnatural. 1, 2, 3. They had more affection for Krishna before he became their son, and then he became their son. And now they have more affection for Krishna even than the other 2 times. How's that? So this explanation is taken from there. It's natural. Because you heard the explanation. It's a very interesting philosophical discussion. Sometime you can read it. 10 verses explaining why the mothers had more affection for Krishna than for their own son. In this particular case, the explanation is Krishna had been away from his friends for a year. They're very attached to him, but he's also very attached to them. And he was away from them for a year. So now he was back with them again. He was very happy. And in his happiness, he was radiating that happiness so much so it made the elder gopis more happy than they were before. Because he was so happy. That's the explanation. But there's this other explanation. So Gaurasundar or Gaurachandra, he is that same Krishna. And everyone had affection for Krishna more than for their own sons or their own friends or anyone else. He was the center of everyone because he is the center of everyone for the devotees. After thus enchanting everyone's heart, Lord Vishwambhara returned home with his elder brother. Sri Advaita Prabhu considered to himself, this boy is not an ordinary person. Then Advaita said to the Vaishnavas, I don't know what sort of boy he is. All the devotees then began to praise the beauty and the charm of that wonderful child. Visvarupa returned home, simply out of formality. Then, as soon as possible, he returned to Advaita's house. He had his lunch and he went back to be with the devotees and hear the rest of the Bhagavatam class. The desire for material enjoyment never appeared in the mind of Visvarupa. He constantly remained in the ecstasy of chanting Krishna's names. Even when he was at home, he never engaged in household activities. Rather, he would always stay in the temple room. When his mother and father spoke for arranging his marriage, Visvarupa felt great mental pain. Visvarupa thought to himself, I will leave home and go to the forest. The heart of the Lord is known only to the Lord. Thus, after a few days, Visvarupa left home to take sannyas. He then became known throughout the world as Sri Shankararanya. Shankararanya. That was his sannyas name. As he traversed the path of devotional service to Lord Krishna, he became celebrated as the topmost Vaishnava. Visvarupa, departure from home, left Sachi and Jagannath grief-stricken. Sri Gauranga cried loudly with his family members and eventually fell unconscious out of separation from his brother. I am unable to describe their feelings of separation by which Jagannath Mishra's entire house became inundated with crying. Understanding that Visvarupa had taken sannyas, Advaita and the other devotees all began weeping. Everyone in Nadia who heard about this incident, whether ordinary or exalted devotee, all felt unhappy. Jagannath Mishra and Sachi were both broken-hearted and continually cried, Visvarup! Visvarup! Sri Mishra was overwhelmed with lamentation for his son, so his friends and relatives all tried to pacify him. Dear Mishra, please control yourself. Do not feel sad, for that great personality has delivered all of us. When someone takes sannyas, millions of family members are promoted to Vaikuntha. Your son has perfected his education by this act. Therefore, it is befitting for you to feel even more happy than before. Saying this, they also held their hands and the feet of Jagannath Mishra. Your son Vishrambar is the ornament of your dynasty. The younger son, Lord Chaitanya. He will eradicate all your suffering. If one has such a son as him, what is the need for millions of sons? In this way, all of Jagannath Mishra's friends tried to pacify him, but his distress remained unmitigated. If somehow or other he regained his composure, as soon as he remembered Vishwarup's qualities, he again lost his patience. Sri Mishra said, I have no reason to believe that this son will remain at home, the younger son. Krishna gave me a son, and then he took him away. Whatever Krishna desires, that is what will happen. Independent of you, the living entities have no power whatsoever. Therefore, O Krishna, I am surrendering my body and senses unto you. In this way, the most sober Jagannath Mishra gradually controlled his mind through the process of Gyan, knowledge and detachment. That is the story of how Visvarupa, who is non-different from Nityananda Swarup, left home. Whoever hears the pastime of Visvarup's acceptance of sannyas attains devotional service to Lord Krishna and freedom from the bondage of fruitive work. I was just reading and understanding an explanation of when statements like that are made, what does it mean? Is it just like exaggeration, it's not for real, or how are we supposed to take it? And the explanation is that the journey has begun. Just like we might say, Shankadari and I left home, his home, and somebody may ask his wife, where's your husband? Oh, he's gone to the program. So he didn't just like leave the house and we're at the program. It takes some time to get from the house to the program or the home visit. But we say he's gone to their home. So it's the beginning of a journey that may take some time to get from point A to point B. There's steps in between. So similarly, when saying this, it's not like all of a sudden we manifest forearms and the Vimana from Vaikuntha comes and takes us to Vaikuntha. But the potency is there in the message, and the journey has begun by this process of doing what we're doing right now, hearing. As the devotees heard about Visvarup's accepting sannyas, they simultaneously felt happiness and lamentation. They said, whatever little opportunity we had for discussing the topics of Krishna together, Krishna has taken away. Let us all leave home and go to the forest. Then we will not see the faces of these sinful people. How long must we tolerate the burning words of these atheists? They are all continuously engaged in materialistic activities. We do not hear the name of Krishna from anyone's mouth. The entire world is absorbed in illusory happiness. This theme spreads itself again and again in Chaitanya Bhagavata. That is, the Vaishnava community were very soft-hearted, and it was difficult, very, very difficult for them to hear vilification of Vaishnavas and vilification of the Lord, and very, very, very hurt them. It comes again and again. That's Vrindavan Dasa's representation. Even if they are instructed, they will not take to devotional service. On the contrary, they will taunt us, saying, "What pleasure do you derive by worshipping Krishna? You even have to beg for your food. In this way, you increase your distress. It is not proper to live with such people. Therefore, we should go to the forest." Saying this, they sighed deeply. Attempting to console them, Sri Advaita said, "You will certainly attain great ecstasy. Even now I am feeling overjoyed at heart, so I can understand that Sri Krishna Chandra has already advented. All of you go and happily chant Krishna's name, and in a few days you will see Krishna right here. Krishna will enjoy his pastimes with all of you. Then the meaning of my name, Advaita, will be fulfilled, and I will be celebrated as the unalloyed servant of Lord Krishna. All you devotees who receive mercy, that even Shukadev Goswami and Prahlad Maharaj did not receive." After hearing Advaita's nectarian words, all the devotees chanted the name of Hari in great ecstasy. As the devotees loudly chanted the name of Hari, their hearts were filled with happiness. Sri Gaurasundar was playing outside with some other children, but when he heard the name of Hari, he went inside the house. The devotees asked him, "Why have you come here?" The Lord replied, "Why did you call me?" Saying this, the Lord ran away with the other children. Yet, by his influence, no one could recognize him. Since Visvarupa left home, the Lord became somewhat more peaceful. He constantly remained at the side of his mother and father so that they would feel some relief from their distress. The Lord stopped playing and concentrated on his studies. He would not leave his books for even a moment. The Lord mastered a sutra after reading it only once, and he was able to defeat all others in debating its meaning. Everyone praised his wonderful intelligence and declared, "Glorious are the father and mother who have such a son." In satisfaction, they then said to Jagannath Mishra, "You are most fortunate to have such a son. In the three worlds, there is no child as intelligent as this boy. He will defeat Brahaspati in learning. He can explain the meaning of anything he hears just once. No one is able to defeat his reasoning." Mother Sachi was pleased to hear about her son's extraordinary qualities, while Jagannath Mishra again became greatly morose at heart. Mishra said to Sachi, "This son will also not remain at home." Sri Visvarupa studied all the scriptures and understood the temporary nature of this world. After learning the essence of the scripture, the sober-minded Visvarupa gave up transitory material life. If this boy also becomes well-versed in the scriptures, then he will also give up material happiness and leave home. This son is our life and soul. If we don't see him, we will both certainly die. Therefore, he should no longer study. Let Nimai remain at home as a fool. Sachi replied, "If he remains a fool, how will he survive? Furthermore, who will offer their daughter to a fool?" Jagannath Mishra replied, "You are the ignorant daughter of a Brahmana. Lord Krishna is the doer, the controller, the maintainer, and the protector of all living entities. The Supreme Lord maintains the entire universe. Who told you that good education can maintain one? Whether one is a fool or a scholar, they will marry whenever and whomever Krishna has sanctioned for them. Education, birth, and other qualities are not only superficial. Krishna alone is the maintainer and strength of all. This can be directly seen in my life. Although I am educated, I'm nevertheless poor. Someone else may be able to properly recite the alphabet, yet he may have thousands of scholars at his doorstep. No, may be unable to properly recite the alphabet. Therefore, the qualities like good education cannot maintain one. Only Krishna maintains us. For one who has never worshipped the lotus feet of Lord Govinda, how is it possible for him to live in comfort and die in peace? If one wants to live without poverty and die peacefully, then he should serve Krishna. Education and wealth will not help. One's distress can never be mitigated without the mercy of Krishna. Even if one is endowed with high education, good birth, and good wealth, One may have luxurious items for enjoyment in his house, yet by the arrangement of the Lord, he may be suffering from disease. Such a person cannot enjoy a thing, and thus burns in misery. I consider him more miserable than one who does not possess anything. Know for certain that one may possess great opulence, but unless Krishna permits, he cannot enjoy. Therefore, do not worry about your son. I assure you that Krishna will maintain him. As long as I live, I will not allow him to suffer the least. We have Lord Krishna as our protector, and you are a good mother and a chaste wife. So why should you worry? Therefore, I say, he does not need to study further. Let him stay at home uneducated. Saying this, Jagannath Mishra called his son and told him, listen, my dear son, from today on, I want you to give up your studies. I forbid you to continue. My dear son, I will give you whatever you desire. Stay comfortable at home. Saying this, Jagannath Mishra went to attend his duties, and Lord Vishwambar refrained from further studies, which is really odd for a Brahmin son. But they changed their mind. Here's why. Because he does more mischief. The personification of eternal religious principles, Sri Gauranga Rai followed his father's instructions and gave up his studies. The Lord was disappointed to give up his scholastic pursuits, so he again began his childhood mischief. Whether in his own house or in another's house, the Lord would break and ruin whatever he got his hands on. He would not even return home at night. Rather, he would continue playing all night with the other boys. The Lord and another boy covered themselves with a blanket and played as a bull. If they saw banana trees at someone's house during the day, at night the Lord and his friend disguised as a bull would destroy them. Thinking that a bull was destroying his bananas, the house owner cried out in lamentation. As he came out from his house, the boys ran away. The Lord would lock the door of someone's house from the outside, and the householder would be able to come out for passing urine or stool. When the householder cried out, "Who has locked my door?" the Lord ran away. In this way, Tridasha Roy played continually, day and night, with his friends. In spite of all Vishwambar's mischievous activities, Jagannath Mishra didn't say a thing. One day, after Jagannath Mishra went for his duties, the Lord became angry, very angry, because he was not allowed to study. When he sat down on the old rejected pots that had been used for preparing offerings for the Lord Vishnu. This topic is most confidential. Whoever hears it will attain devotional service to Lord Krishna. Using those rejected pots as a singhasana, Lord Gaurasundar smiled as he sat there. The black soot from those pots decorated Gaura's limbs, and he appeared like a golden doll smeared with sandalwood pulp mixed with aguru. His friends went and informed Mother Sachi, Nimai is sitting on the rejected pots. When Mother Sachi went there and saw Nimai in that condition, she lamented and said, "My dear son, this is not a proper place to sit. These are rejected pots, and if one touches them, he must take bath. Haven't you understood this by now?" The Lord replied, "You don't allow me to study, so how will I know the difference between good and bad, or a fool and a brahmana? I'm a fool, so I don't know which place is good and which is bad. Therefore, I consider all places equal." After saying this, the Lord smiled from his seat on the rejected pots and accepted the mood of Dattatreya, the topmost knower of the absolute truth. You know who is Dattatreya? Dattatreya? He's a partial incarnation, son of Atri and Anasuya, partial incarnation of Vishnu, Dattatreya. And in certain places in India, in Maharashtra and in Gujarat, he's a worshipable Lord. Somewhat common, Dattatreya. And he instructed Haihaya and Prahlad and King Yadu. In the morning classes, we're reading Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, Uddhava Gita, 11th canto. And in one place, Krishna is telling Uddhava about an Avaduta Brahmana who taught King Yadu about his 24 gurus. And that Avaduta Brahmana is Dattatreya, it turns out. Dattatreya. So he's a form of the Lord who acted like Avaduta, means totally no regard for social convention. Very, totally like a mad person externally, but fixed in transcendence and would give transcendental knowledge constantly. That was Dattatreya. So the Lord accepted the mood of Dattatreya, the topmost knower of the absolute truth. The Lord replied, "My dear mother, you are very childish. I'm never in an impure place. Wherever I am, the place becomes most sacred. The Ganges and all the other tirthas are present at that place. Purity and impurity are only our mental creation. Please consider, what fault is there with the Creator? Even if something is considered impure by the Vedas and people in general, can it remain impure if I touch it? The fact these pots are not at all contaminated because you have used them to cook for Lord Vishnu. The pots used in cooking for Lord Vishnu are never contaminated. Indeed, simply by the touch of his cooking pots, other places become purified. Therefore, I never reside in a contaminated place. Everything becomes pure by my touch." The Lord, in the mood of an ordinary child, smiled as he spoke on the absolute truth. Still, no one recognized him due to the influence of his illusory energy. Everyone began to laugh after hearing the child speak. Then Mother Sachi said, "Come and take bath." The Lord, however, did not move from his seat, and Sachi said again, "Come quickly, before your father learns about this." The Lord replied, "I tell you, if you don't allow me to study, then I won't leave this place." Everyone present then admonished the Lord's mother, "Why don't you allow him to study? Some people take great efforts to get their child to study. It's most auspicious if a child wants to study. Which enemy has given you the idea to keep your son at home uneducated? This child has no fault at all." Then they said to Nimai, "Come, Nimai, if you are not allowed to return to your studies from today, then you can continue your destruction." Still the Lord did not leave his seat. He continued sitting there, smiling, as the pious people there floated in an ocean of bliss. Then Mother Sachi personally pulled him off his seat, and Lord Gaurachandra smiled like a shining blue sapphire. We're almost done. The Lord spoke the absolute truth in the mood of Dattatreya, yet no one could recognize him due to the influence of his illusory energy. The pious Sachi then took Nimai to the Ganges, and they both took bath. At that time, the magnanimous Jagannath Mishra arrived there. Shashi explained to him what had taken place. She then said, "Our son is morose because he is not allowed to study." The others there said, "Oh, Mishra, you are broad-minded. Who has inspired you to stop his studies? Whatever Krishna desires will certainly take place. Therefore, give up your anxiety and fearlessly allow him to study. You are fortunate that your son wants to study. You should arrange to give him a Brahmana thread on an auspicious day." Shri Mishra replied, "All you are my well-wishers. Therefore, whatever you say, I must accept." Seeing the child's uncommon activities, everyone was struck with wonder, yet no one could understand him. Some most fortunate persons had previously given Jagannath Mishra a prediction. Here's the prediction. "This boy is not ordinary. Please carefully keep this child in the core of your heart. Thus, the Lord of Vaikuntha constantly enjoyed his confidential pastimes in the courtyard of his house. By the order of his father, the Supreme Lord then joyfully resumed his studies. And the last, accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. I mean, the pastimes are very charming. And as he said at the beginning of the chapter, please listen carefully because these are the activities of Lord Narayan in his childhood feature. Now, Lord Narayan doesn't manifest childhood pastimes. There's an understanding given by our acharyas that Krishna, in Krishna Loka, he has an eternal form of Yovana, or 16. That is to say, there's no childhood pastimes, no baby, childhood, just youth. And when he appears in this world, he does the whole pastime, because there's no birth pastime in Goloka. Mother Jasoda and Nanda have the understanding that Krishna is their son, but there's no birth pastime. And there's no babyhood pastime, no crawling pastime, no stealing butter pastime, no, because he's eternally Yovana, eternally 16. But the parental affection is there, Nanda and Jasoda, towards Krishna, although they're not engaging with him in his childhood pastimes. So when Krishna performs his childhood pastimes, they're astonishing and they're very, very special. So similarly with Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya has his eternal abode in the same place. Lord Chaitanya's eternal abode is in Goloka. Did you know that? There's a quadrant or section of Krishna Loka where Lord Chaitanya and his associates eternally are engaged together in pastimes. But these childhood pastimes don't take place there. So it's very special. Very, very special. The childhood pastimes of the personality of Godhead Lord Narayan in his form as his own devotee, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very special. And we were discussing this also. In Lord Ramachandra's pastimes, he appears as a son with brothers. But there's only a handful of verses that describe his childhood pastimes in Valmiki Ramayana. So these are very special pastimes. They're unique, and once in a day of Brahma. I mentioned this. I wanted to correct something I said earlier today. Krishna appears once in a day of Brahma, and he appears during the Vaivasvata Manu, which is Manu number 7, and he appears in the 28th Yuga cycle. So it's something like near midday in Brahma's day. It's Manu number 7 out of 14, and it's the 28th Yuga cycle out of 71 Yuga cycles. So it's a little before noon in Brahma's day. And after Krishna departs, Lord Chaitanya appears once in a day of Brahma. Very special. And it's only 500 something years ago that this took place, out of a whole day of Brahma. We're really fortunate. And I was thinking this also. Vrindavan Das never experienced all these pastimes. He was a contemporary with Lord Chaitanya, but he was 3 years old when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. And as far as we know, he didn't go to Puri. He didn't have association with them other than when he was just a toddler, a 3-year-old. But he knows these pastimes like, they're like he experienced them directly. And how he experienced them was hearing them again and hearing them again and hearing them again and hearing them again and hearing them again. He was literally the life and soul of Vrindavan Das. But we're not accustomed to hearing these pastimes. We hear Krishna's pastimes more. We don't hear Lord Chaitanya's childhood pastimes so much. In fact, many people, it's hearing them for the first time. So it's nice because these are the pastimes of Lord Narayan in his childhood feature. As a devotee of himself, it's very confidential, very charming. And purifying. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Now, because it's pastimes, there's probably not so much discussion going to take place, but let's see what happens. Okay, fine.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's elder brother, Visvarupa, right?
Yes.
So he was also a Vishnu Tattva Maharaj?
Yes, that's what's described.
Okay.
You can say an expansion of or an incarnation of Lord Nityananda. He was like Lord Nityananda, Vishnu Tattva for sure.
But now in his Leela, he decided to choose the Nityananda as his companion in this moment, in this whole Sankirtana movement, instead of his own elder brother.
There's not a lot of description of Visvarupa. He appears early, and that's it. We don't hear about him later. So if you want to know why, you have to ask somebody else besides me. There must be some transcendental reason why, but he played a certain role during a certain part of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and then poof, he takes sannyas. There must be some deep, profound explanation somewhere by some Gaudiya Vaishnavas. I've not heard it ever discussed. There's very little spoken about him. Sometimes it's like that.
Okay.
In one of the books written by Rupa Goswami was Lago Bhagavatamrita. Lago means light. It's now translated and printed by the BBT, that thick with commentary. And it's just a description of avatars, forms of the Lord as they appear in this world. And it's really detailed. And he has different categories of those avatars. And some of those avatars, they don't have mother and father, and there's a certain category. There's some that they just give teachings and they don't have a consort. There's there's only this little slice of what's known about their life, and that's it. There's certain characteristics of certain kinds of avatars. In short, nothing is mentioned of Visvarupa, but the category is there's very little known about him. He has a certain function. He gives transcendental teachings, and that's it. That's all we hear. So be as curious as you like. There's categories where there's very little known about. Like here's a question that I had. Other than Nrsingadev's rescuing Prahlad, are there other pastimes of Lord Nrsingadev that are known from the scripture? It's a good question, right? searched and I searched and I searched, and I found something. It had it presented recently. It's a little detailed, but very little is known about Lord Nrsingadev other than his coming to rescue Prahlad and the exchange between him and Prahlad. And that's about it. I mean, it's famous, but that's about it. So Visvarupa, he did what he did. He took sannyas, and we don't hear about him. There was a function for the nourishment of Lord Chaitanya's Leela that he performed. There's more coming up, by the way, about indirectly about Visvarupa. Let me, it's short. Mother Sachi starts in her mind to think bad thoughts about Advaita. Advaitacharya is the cause of Visvarupa taking sannyas because Advaitacharya gave transcendental knowledge to Visvarupa. He's now left, and now I have nothing. So she was criticizing him in her mind. Lord Chaitanya came to know. He came to chastise his mother. You don't offend a great. And so it was a pastime. He played a function to nourish the teachings and the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, Visvarupa. Vishnu Tattva did, very little of anything. In the back.
Raj, probably answer is the same because you said we don't know much about Vishwarup.
You're going to ask more.
Just curious why he knew that Vishwambar is a supreme person. Because
Lord Chaitanya disclosed it to him, he came to know.
Oh.
Because otherwise one cannot know. Others he was covering with his Yogamaya potency, and he withdrew his Yogamaya potency for his brother. So his brother knew.
But still he left home.
Well, yeah, still he left home. Same. For pastime purposes, why did Kardama Muni leave home? He was a devotee. He had Vatsalya Rasa, parental affection. He had the personality Godhead as his son. And when he reached a certain stage, he left home. He knew his son was the personality Godhead. Why did he leave home? He left home to teach by example. So Vishwarupa was teaching something. I mean, probably not what you and I would do. He was moved to do what he did because he's nourishing the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He provided the opportunity for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go search for his brother. Of course, the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't need that reason. But when he left Puri to go search for his brother, that was the reason. My brother left home. I heard he's somewhere in South India, which is a big place. I want to go find him. So they couldn't. He was taking the position, Lord Chaitanya was taking the position of a sannyasi who was subordinate to the love of his devotees and the wish. So he was appealing to them, please let me go. And they were, stay a little longer and attend the Doli Yatra, and stay a little longer and attend this and attend that. And because they didn't want it. He was testing and teasing their affection for him, but he wanted to go to deliver the Sankirtana movement to all of South India. So it's part of his pastime. To nourish the Lord's pastime, everyone does what they do. Those who are. And, the explanation doesn't always come out to be rational. It's rasika rather than rational.
Thank you.
Anything else? You have something online? Okay.
First question is from Srida Prabhu. Guru Maharaj, the analogy of sugar and tongue resembles similar to me the analogy of Suryakanta stone and sun described in the purports of Queen Kundi prayers, which points out Lord is impartial, but it is receptivity of the individual which makes it appear that the Lord is partial. May I know if my understanding is correct?
Yes, it's correct.
Shnehavalli Mataji.
Wait. Did you understand the question? You didn't understand the question.
So it's giving this,
I'm going to explain the question. I understand the question. Suryakanta gem is mentioned in Brahma Samhita. And a Suryakanta gem is not one that reflects light, but it stores light. And it shines, it radiates light. So a Suryakanta gem has the property of taking the light of the sun, storing it within the gem. So even if it's in a dark place, it's luminous. So as a Suryakant gem is simply exhibiting the light of the sun, using that as an example. So similarly, the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone, but then the sun acts differently on different objects. According to the different object, the sunlight is going to affect the object differently. So the sun is impartial; it shines everywhere. The Suryakanta gem shows the sunlight, and other objects don't. Other objects do different things. They reflect, or they're dull, or they're whatever. So the Lord is impartial, as the sun is impartial, but one reflects that the nature of the Lord according to one's own nature. The Lord is impartial, and we have a different relationship with Him. According to our relationship with Him, it manifests differently. The Lord is neutral. That was the point. And He's in Singapore. 13 hours difference. Yeah.
next question is from Shnehavalli Mataji. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, in Uddhava Gita we are studying about detachment. How can we understand Jagannath Mishra's attachment or distress for his elder son Visvarupa after he accepts sannyasa?
Affection. But how do we understand Dasarath's feeling towards Ram when Ram left for the forest? It's a transcendental emotion. What is being taught in the early chapters of Uddhava Gita is Gyan Mishra Bhakti, or through knowledge becoming detached from the temporary. But Jagannath Mishra's relationship with Lord Chaitanya is not temporary. It's an eternal relationship, and he's experiencing a eternal bhav. He is beyond detachment from the temporary. He's immersed in attachment to the eternal. It's a transcendental emotion. And it's an ecstasy. It's not material attachment.
Next question is Hare Krishna Maharaj, what is the service of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda at Goloka? In earthly Leela, most of their pastimes are with child or adolescent Krishna. So I was curious to know, since Krishna's childhood pastimes are not there in Goloka.
Their mother and father, that's their pastime in Goloka. They're not enjoying directly, they have the bhav of being mother and father. just like, you have a young daughter here and she's very enthusiastic and very social and, gregarious like anything. And someday she's going to be a little older, and someday she'll be, grown up and out of the home. But you'll have feelings for her, like, because you know her personality when she's younger, even when she's older. So Nanda and Jasoda in Krishna Loka, they have affection for Krishna like they had when he was little, but he's not little anymore. They have the same affection. That's their situation. And they engage in household activities with Krishna as a youth, as a 16-year-old. That's it. Anything else in the room? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.